Okay, so there's been a lot of commentators talking about we're living through a historic moment, and obviously in terms of predictions that the global economic impact may be akin to that of the Great Depression, which is sobering indeed. So this afternoon I'm going to look at two of the great historic events of the last century, and actually including the Great Depression and the Second World War. And actually those events had a great impact on the remainder of the 20th century. So the Great Depression, followed by the Second World War, were the first major challenges to Rotary, but also the first real opportunities for Rotarians to step up and show their fellow New Zealanders what they stood for, how they could serve, and what they could achieve. Its response would also not just leave a lasting legacy, but energise Rotary to make a difference in the post-war world. So it really is a breakthrough period. For Rotary International, the Great Wall Street crash, however, in 1929 came as a real shock. It shocked its confidence, its freewheeling optimism, and the great period of expansion throughout the world, including Rotary Club of Wellington and Auckland in New Zealand in 1921, gave way to the first membership decline in 1932 and 33. How could an organisation whose membership was facing bankruptcy or the dole queue survive, let alone serve? But after the initial shock, Rotarians worldwide brushed themselves off and retrenched in order to survive. Fancy meals were replaced by packed lunches, or no food at all as members went on a diet. So I guess the lesson is keep eating. The one thing about being able to Zoom in these days is that you don't even have to pack your lunch. You've got it at home. In times of crisis, people often rush to rash solutions. And at the 1933 Rotary International Convention in Boston, one delegate challenged Rotary to relinquish some of its ideals, to which the General Secretary, Ches Perry, retorted. And the main gist of this response was, do not lose your vision and continue to serve your communities. And of course, a year earlier, Herbert Taylor, the Chicago Rotarian, had come up with the code of conduct, the four-way test. So there was lots of responses to the Great Depression. I'll go back. The Great Depression descended upon New Zealand like a grey and ghostly visitor to the house, wrote John Mulgan in his posthumous report on experience memoir. Despite what people believed at the time, there was little New Zealand could do with export economy and overseas earnings virtually halving between 1929 and 31. Farmers stopped spending, and this had a ripple effect through the economy. The slump was deepened by a squeeze in credit as banks restricted funds, a collapse of investment and consumer confidence, which then was exacerbated by the government's deflationary policies. A very different response to what we're seeing at the moment around the world and here in New Zealand. Government retrenchment itself in 1932-33, for example, resulted in unemployment hitting the semi-skilled, the skilled, and even white-collar workers. Education and apprenticeships were now no longer guaranteed to work. And as a result of the Depression, urban drift stopped, couples postponed marriages, and those married postponed having children. Abortions and suicides increased. Social realism dominated how writers and painters portrayed the world. And that optimism of jazz was replaced by the blues. In short, the prosperity, progressiveness, and public goodwill of the previous decade in the 1920s had been replaced by poverty, penny pinching, and protests. And it's this psychological impact of the Great Depression, in fact, why it's called the Great Depression, would instill in New Zealand a sense of anxiety and an obsession with security that lasted the next half century. It had a profound impact on New Zealanders. New Zealanders themselves at the time responded to the Depression in many different ways, including mass riots in the four main centres during early 1932, and particularly bad in Queen Street, where there was a lot of looting. But what is remarkable about New Zealand during the Depression is that there was not more disorder. The more common response to the Depression was a reaffirmation of traditional values of individualism combined with community cohesion. So there was an upsurge in number 8 wire self-sufficiency required to build a chook hut out the back of your section. There's eggs, so you're producing your own eggs. But also the new national hero of the time, Jean Batten, had shown with her world record solo flights that she'd mastered the new machinery of industrial society, the plane. The partner resurgence of individualism was an increase in acts of social cohesion, with crowds flocking to carnivals, parades, and community sing-songs, including Rotary as an early adopter of community singing. Maybe the next lesson is bring back the singing. And we're seeing a lot of groups and choirs over Zoom meetings continuing that. And it's been really amazing. The 1930s began with a shock for Rotary itself, with the so-called Ninth Conference in Napier, obviously postponed because of the Hawke's Bay earthquake on the 3rd of February 1931, killing 256 people and remains our greatest national disaster in New Zealand. At its AGM later in 1931, Napier Rotary President issued a rallying call. In the work of reconstruction and rehabilitation, it presents the members of this club, along with their fellow citizens, a wonderful opportunity of cooperating in the building of Napier of the future. And indeed, Rotarians would hold all but 2 of the places in the Napier Reconstruction Committee, responsible for assisting the State Commissioner to rebuild Napier. And the parallel trends with Rotary worldwide, the expansive decade during the 1920s in New Zealand gave way to the first decline in membership. So there was just over 1,000 members nationwide in 1930-31 when it had that first loss, including all 20 members of the Rotary Club of Thames, and the first club to fail in New Zealand because of the Depression and the closing down of mining in Thames. It was a psychological blow and cast a shadow for the Rotary movement. And I guess we need to be prepared for clubs that will close potentially in the coming year, but ring fence any psychological or organisational wide damage of that. And Rotary won't be alone. The Depression swamped Rotary like so many organisations with requests for help, and it defaulted to a classic rattle the tin and handout mentality of many charities. Wellington Rotary distributed free apples each day, but would it keep the debt collector away? District Governor Harry Guthrie of Guthrie Barron Paint Company was seen as the man for the times and served consecutive terms in 1930 through to 32 and took a broad brush to the crisis with his motto, more work, meaning there was more work for Rotarians to do in their communities at this time. And certainly the Boys' Work Committee of the Wellington Rotary had its work cut out finding work for school leavers during the Depression. And after an extensive canvass of city employers had placed just 50 boys out of 500. It was finding jobs was tough job, was a tough job. Rotarians also sponsored students and clubs provided scholarships. The health of children continued to be a major calling for Rotary, with Plunkett continuing to get that support, and also health camps during this period. And of course, it was also still paying off Karitani Hospital, which wasn't helped at Mount Melrose, which wasn't helped by the Great Depression, but was finally paid off by Wellington Rotary in 1935. For all the good intentions of this essential charity work, it was not the higher purpose of Rotary. And the consensus was there was a more effective work could be done in their daily lives as business owners and employers, and through concentrated effort in the community, rather than spreading too widely. The greatest example of this, and that Rotary also never abandoned its principles, was the campaign to establish the Crippled Children's Society in 1935, and the first case of Rotary in action on a national scale. So the campaign began with orthopaedic surgeon and Wellington Rotarian Dr. Alexander Gillies in the centre, speaking about the plight of his crippled child patients at a Wellington Rotary luncheon on the 13th of May 1930, right at the start of the Great Depression. A subsequent survey revealed some 5,000 crippled children throughout the country, the result of earlier polio epidemics in the 1920s and during the First World War. And in 1935, Rotary launched the Crippled Children's Society of New Zealand with 17 branches, and its first president and its former Wellington Rotary president, Justice David Smith, as its first president. Also, Rotarian Charles, how to think of it? Oh, we may not have him. Of course, we've also got Rotarian Charles Norwood as vice president, and later long-time president through to the 1960s of CCS, who helped secure an astonishing gift of £50,000, around about 5 million in today's money, from Lord Nuffield, formerly Sir William Morris of Morris Motors. CCS got a running start with an inevitable financial basis, a national body, a very strong branch network, and support of prominent businessmen and professionals. Of course, the final part of the CCS Foundation story is a partnership with the state. So the state looked after these children with their medical care, and it was up to the CCS was the discovery of these cases, contact the families through its welfare officers, providing support during treatment and rehab, and training for occupational work. So it provides an early example of Rotary initiated and largely led social enterprise, combining innovation, energy, and philanthropy of the voluntary sector with the delivery power of the state. And it also showcased the new Rotary way of launching organisations which subsequently run independently and stand on their own feet, which is a quote from Sir Charles Norwood. For these developments, it was the advent of the Labour government, and especially the Social Security Act of 1938, providing a wide range of benefits such as unemployment, sickness, invalid, and family benefits that significantly changed the welfare landscape. It's just the state funds outshone sunshine funds in terms of making that difference on a wide scale. And of course, it would also have an impact on Rotary, because a raft of early Rotary social enterprise programs, such as the iconic Milk and Schools, which has been started at Mount Cook School in the 1920s, and also social housing with the Waterloo Railway settlement in Lower Hutt, was started by Wellington Rotary. But these would be taken over by the state and expanded on a scale never before seen in New Zealand. So here we come to this lesson that in the post-COVID-19 recovery, this could be a similar challenge in terms of the state as it looks to recharge the economy and support the community, but it also may be an opportunity to partner with the state. From 1935 too, there was an upturn in Rotary circles. There was more hope, and Rotary membership increased to almost 1,200 members in that year. And it may have been also the visit by the founder, Paul Harris, of course on the left, and Sir John Eilert on the right, who was his host for much of his tour. By 1939, Rotary now had 26 clubs, and the membership was up to 1,400. And the focus of the district conferences during this time was all about more clubs, more members, more Rotary. And Rotary's mission in the community also got a boost. Oh, sorry, that's the, it's almost 85 years next month. This is Wellington Rotary Club. It's meeting with Paul Harris in front of the old Dominion Museum in May 1935. And Rotary's mission to serve the community was given a boost by Rotarian John Robert J.R. Mackenzie on the right of the Mackenzie's chain of stores. In 1938, provided £10,000 to support children to finish their education, and then in 1940 for the centenary, and as a mark of recognition of the public support of his business, but also of the inspiration of Rotary personally, he gifted £300,000 or $30 million today to establish the J.R. Mackenzie Trust, the needs of then returned servicemen, as well as the health and well-being of children of New Zealand, making it one of the largest philanthropic trusts, not only in New Zealand, but the Southern Hemisphere at the time. His vision obviously continues with the strong philanthropic identity of the J.R. Mackenzie Trust and its vision of a socially just and inclusive Aotearoa New Zealand. Even from an international perspective, Wellington was now hosting the 1937 Pan-Pacific Conference and the last of the interwar period, or what Paul Harris liked to call them the peace conferences. And here's Japanese Rotarian Yozo Nomura being embraced by Prime Minister Michael Joseph Savage. They were invited up to Parliament, and Nomura was a real hit at the conference and talked about this was the Pacific century, and that Australia, New Zealand and Japan must be on a road of goodwill. Actually, 8 years later, in 1945, Nomura would be there to welcome General MacArthur on his first night of occupation in Japan. And the outbreak of the Second World War in a generation was not unexpected, but it still came as a huge blow to Rotary and its cherished objective of international peace. For Rotarians, the priority now was service for king and country. And many younger Rotarians enlisted in the armed forces, but also older Rotarians, such as Wellington's founding president, Sir Alexander Roberts, who donned the uniform as embarkation staff officer and later New Zealand representative on the British Ministry of Transport. Rotarians also kept the home defences going. The war economy, specifically petrol and even food rationing, gradually came to interrupt the normal rhythm of Rotary as war conditions worsened. So the annual district conferences were suspended between 1942 and 44. And because of the inability to travel to Rotary International Convention, the district governor, David Ewan of Wellington, stayed on for a second term, and they repeated this with other district governors. We called ones that served through the 30s. At the club level, while clubs continued to hold meetings, just as we continue today, some experienced catering difficulties due to the rationing, and it curtailed with petrol rationing a lot of cherished social outings and picnics. Rotary clubs powered up permanent war work committees that achieved an extraordinary record of service. Rotarians were in positions and possessed connections, experience and skills to serve well the war effort, especially fundraising for the war and raising considerable amounts of money for the war effort. In Wellington, Rotarians also worked closely with the Tokach Soldiers Club to provide social amenities and entertainment for 10,000 servicemen during 1940 and 41. And Rotary never abandoned its pre-war causes and charities, but it also started new ones that met new needs. And most significantly, Heritage Inc., an organisation to provide sons and daughters of deceased servicemen with guidance that would have been available had they lived. And this was established in 1942 with, again, Justice Dave Smith elected as its inaugural president, and with many Rotarians amongst its membership. There's Justice David Smith there as president, earlier as president of Wellington Rotary. And by 1962, some 5,000 heritage children, as they became known, had been assisted by Heritage Inc. With the loss of hundreds of Rotary clubs worldwide in occupied countries, Rotary International called upon Rotarians to undertake their own recruitment into friendly territories at home. Rotarians in New Zealand responded with gusto. From 1943, a record 25 new clubs were formed around the country during the next 3 years. Incredible amount of expansion. And the formation of these clubs were some important developments for the post-war period as well, including the first suburban clubs with the Hutt Rotary Club sponsored by Wellington. Rotarians celebrated the end of the war in typical style with a Thanksgiving collection during the VE Day celebrations in Wellington that were forwarded to the Rotary Club of London for children in the bombed areas of that city. And it would be the start of a bigger campaign, Feed Britain, that continued right out into the early 1950s. Rotarians also started to actively turn their attention to the rehabilitation of soldiers. And Rotarians in an array of committees and centres provided return servicemen with advice and guidance, as well as placement into professions, trade training and business. In turn, numbers of return servicemen joined up to Rotary. Around the country, Rotarians were already looking to honour the memory of Rotarians and their comrades who would not return from the war, as they dedicated themselves to building a modern New Zealand. The period ended with Wellington member John Ilott. We had sorry, that's not John. We had John earlier with Paul Harris. The period ended with Wellington member John Ilott being elected as second vice president of Rotary International for 1944-45. And he attended the Rotary International Convention in Chicago in both 44 when he talked about heritage that had been formed in New Zealand. And in 1945, it was an important convention with the United Nations in the process of being chartered. And New Zealand did not have a current Rotarian on its small official government delegation, but it did have a former charter member and former board director, Chief Justice Sir Michael Myers, who also helped establish the International Court of Justice. Rotary International and New Zealand Rotarians ever since have worked closely with the UN, its agencies and programs. And why Give Every Child a Future in partnership with UNICEF is such an appropriate centenary program, not least what has happened over the last 6 months with the epidemic in Samoa, but also obviously COVID-19 pandemic right now. Rotarians and potential future members came home to a Rotary landscape that was booming with 50 clubs and 2,300 members. It more than doubled Rotary from the start only 15 years earlier. New Zealand is recognised as one of the most Rotarised, if not the most Rotarised areas in the whole world, District Governor and future post-war Rotary International President Harold Thomas declared at the 1945 District Conference. And at that conference, they were talking about the process of establishing the first chair of obstetrics and gynecology for the predicted baby boom and the precursor of National Women's Hospital. Rotary was set itself to play a significant role in the post-war birth of modern New Zealand. The memory of dark clouds of the Great Depression and World War II were fast receding as Rotarians prepared to celebrate the Silver Jubilee of Rotary in 1946. But more, the outlook looked golden. In summary, and historians are careful about presenting lessons from the history, taking history out of its historical context, as Split reminded us. History never repeats. We're even more reticent about making projections, although it's never actually stopped us. So the Great Depression, the Second World War, abundantly reveals that in response to challenges that required Rotary and Rotarians to adapt and change, they never lost sight of their higher purpose of Rotary, and most significantly, the value of service to society. And communications was key. More work, more Rotary and service were the calls during the Depression and the World War, but words without actions are meaningless. And the founding of CCS, the J.R. Mackenzie Trust, and Heritage, to name just a few of the legacy projects, makes this a breakthrough period in the history of Rotary. And significantly through its actions, Rotary revived itself and ended the post-war period with confidence and renewed strength to contribute to making a new modern world in the post-war years. Kamua Kanuri, walking backwards into the future, a well-known whakatauki. And wearing my historian's hat, as well as experience as a former chief executive of a national organisation that had to make a strategic shift, I guess my advice would be, do not let this opportunity slip through your fingers. This is a unique moment in time for Rotary, because as we are all living in our bubbles, this is the greatest living example of service above self. In the post-COVID-19 era, there are fallow fields of renewed understanding of community, ready to be sown. But it is also about these communities in the hard months and possibly years to come will require visionary leadership, and above all, mana tangata, people of action. So, kia kaha, all strength to your arm. Thank you.